Hello and welcome to the Good Game Podcast. This is episode 4. My name is Lin Jie Kong and joining me today is Ben Shackleford.
Hello.
And Peter Burns.
That's me.
So to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Good Game this year, I thought I'd get every member of the Good Game team on and talk about their history, how they got into Good Game and what they do. So today is the producing and directing podcast. And as
Is that what I do?
Yeah, is that what we do? So we're actually responsible for Good Game, Good Game Spawn Point, and Good Game Pocket.
Yeah.
So if anything goes wrong, we're to blame.
That's it.
Send your letters to us.
First ones to go.
Yeah, exactly. We get all the complaints.
Yeah.
Right. So to start off, your life history.
How much time do we have?
Yeah.
We have enough time. So I want to start off with you, Ben, because I think you've got the most fully fledged career out of us three.
Well worded. If you said more interesting, I was gonna pipe up enough to say something.
Because I think your career is more interesting, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Hells yeah.
Ben, you've been in this industry quite a while.
I have.
How did you get started?
Okay, how far back do you want to go, Lynn?
All the way, baby.
All
It was
the
the
way
70s.
from when you were born.
No. Okay, I was at uni, Swinburne Uni down in Melbourne, paying for my education through Officeworks, which is a great uni job because I could get all the stationery I wanted. And I was going to a lot of film festivals, pretty much just immersing myself in film. And what I noticed was the people who were getting to talk to other filmmakers, celebrity filmmakers, actors, all the rest of it were people from the media. And this made me think, okay, so maybe if I did a show about the film industry and kind of presented at various film festivals and film screenings, I would get to meet these filmmakers and build a network through that. So that's essentially what I did. I paid for it myself. I got a little bit of sponsorship from Apple. They provided me with a whole edit suite with Final Cut Pro. And I basically, on weekends and weeknights, in and around full-time uni, full-time Officeworks, I made a show for Channel 31 Melbourne, which was called The Director's Chair. And it was all about...
That's the wankiest thing
I know,
ever.
but it was great. And it was all about, filmmaking from the inside. So I was the anti-Entertainment Tonight. So I never asked what you were wearing or what your birthday was. My thing was always, what lenses did you choose? Why did you choose this particular film stock? That kind of stuff. And at the first, period of that was all very independent filmmakers. And then as I just started to make more episodes, I got to meet more interesting filmmakers or more diverse filmmakers, more established filmmakers, a lot of Australians. And then I basically somehow got the attention or something of Village Roadshow, and they said, oh look, we'll provide you with some of our talent that we're flying out here. So I was very lucky. I got to meet some huge Hollywood names like Will Smith and Russell Crowe and all that kind of stuff, and basically build episodes around it. Ovation, which was an arts channel on Foxtel, saw the show, or I submitted, I can't remember, but basically they said, look, we're not going to give you any money, which is, if you want to get into television, you're going to hear that a lot. We're not going to give you any money, but we are going to take your show and we're going to run it. So that helped me just sort of up the production process a little bit in terms of getting new cameras and all the rest of it. Before all of that, I was doing the entire show on my own. I was shooting it, editing it, presenting it, everything. And I learnt more from that show than any classroom did at Swinburne Uni. I do not regret my time at Swinburne University, but they don't teach you things about picking up the phone and cold calling a studio or an agent or anything like that and saying, look, this is my show, this is who I am, and this is what I want to do. So Director's Chair taught me all of that. After a little bit of time, through the network, I got offered a job at a production company called White House Productions. They were primarily a skateboarding video production company, but they did a couple of films. And I shot a documentary called Tic Tac to Heel Flip, the history of Australian skateboarding. And it was all about...
Is that on YouTube, Ben?
It probably is somewhere. Look, I only shot it. I didn't direct it or produce it. I was still very young and still early in my career, but it was a lot of fun. I got to meet Tony Hawk and lots of skaters. I was kind of a bit of a skeg, as they said, when in my youth.
What's a skeg?
A skeg is a skater.
Right.
Well, at the school that I was going to, that's what you were known as. You were known as a skeg.
Cool.
So it was great. I got to skate and make videos and meet interesting people. I got to hang out with Ben Pappas and Dustin Dolan and lots of cool skaters, so that was really good. But they also made a couple of films. They made a film called Down and Out with the Dolls, which was an American-funded project, and I got to work as a production assistant. All that time, I'm still doing my show, Director's Chair, and then somehow I think another production company saw Director's Chair. They offered me a job. This was a completely different production company. It was more aimed at baby boomers. So I went from making skateboarding videos to making shows about finance. I quite enjoyed that job, and I started as sort of an assistant producer, and I basically worked my way up in that little company. And then after the two managing directors stole every single cent that was in the company and did a runner, and I turned up one day and basically found out that we had no money, I was very lucky. I got the attention of Channel 9. Very lucky to get that job. I was still quite young, in my mid-20s or something like that, even early 20s. And I was an on-station director at Channel 9, GTV Melbourne, and that was in the days when it was still in Bendigo Street in Richmond. So it was a classic old building where they shot Graham Kennedy and Warner Brothers Kids and kind of shows that I respected. And it was still run by the Packers at that point. So, every Christmas you got a big, Kerry
Ham.
Packer signed ham.
Like it's a ham with Kerry Packer's face glazed onto it.
Enjoy your ham. I love Channel 9. And then I was there for quite a while. And then basically I was like, okay, I think I'm going to jump into the freelancing world. So I did a lot of that, worked for a whole bunch of Melbourne-based production companies, like heaps and heaps. And I'd go any week from directing or producing an ad to a full video for Ford to I did a lot of car ads, like huge amount of car ads. I did a lot of work for Village Roadshow. I kept my relationship up with those guys during that time, and I got to do behind the scenes work on the Matrix, on the Lord of the Rings, on the Scooby-Doo movie that they shot up in Warner Brothers Movie World, all that kind of stuff. So I just kept really busy, and then Good Game was one of those shows that I just watched on a regular basis. On ABC, I watched Good Game, The Gruen Nation, I think it was called then, or The Gruen Transfer, whatever it was, and Margaret and David. And I saw that a job came up at Good Game, and I applied thinking, wow, if I could work on Good Game or At the Movies with Margaret and David, that would be awesome. And I had a terrible job interview because I was directing a car show while I was on the phone with our boss doing the interview. And so I was having to tell the camera operator, to get that shot, hang on, I've just got to answer this question. Yes, I do believe I'm skilled at multitasking. Hang on, can you just wait a minute? I need to tell my camera operator to change tape or something. So it was a terrible interview. I put the phone down and thought, well, I didn't get that job. But, a couple of days later, I got a call saying, right, do you want to move to Sydney and do you want to come and work on Good Game? And the rest is history.
That being said, you are the most qualified person on this team, possibly. Like, you've directed feature films. You've won a Logie.
Yeah, I have.
Ben's won a Logie. What have you won, Peter?
Where do you keep your Logie? I have.
Well, it's owned by the
ribbons.
Production company. I don't get it.
Yeah,
it's not fair.
Yeah, nominated for numerous awards.
I've still got my 4th place in sprinting ribbon. From
the last
Nobody's
thing.
taken that from
What
you.
do you got? Can I just, before we move on, throw back to you're at uni at Swinburne.
Yes.
What were you actually studying there?
I was studying film and television, a little bit of radio, a little bit of IT.
Sure.
But I was pretty much entrenched in the film unit there. And everybody has a different experience at university. For me personally, and this is not speaking ill of Swinburne, I didn't find it a hugely useful experience. I found it useful in terms of access to facilities, but I didn't really build a network there, and I didn't find any of the teachers particularly inspiring. I've just got to be honest. And I think the two things, or it's not two things, but amongst many things that they teach that they don't teach you at uni, which you do learn very quickly on the job, is just the basics of things like budgeting and call sheets and people management and all that kind of stuff. And you get out in the real world and you're like, wow, a call sheet is actually a really important asset to a production unit, and they don't spend a single day teaching you that in film school. They might do now. I was going to school in the Stone Age, so who knows?
Before the internet, right?
Actually, yes. Yeah. It's funny, television production. The two things I hate most in the world is paperwork and early mornings, and television is pretty much paperwork and early mornings.
You have picked the wrong career, Ben.
I have.
You really should have gone and done something else. Peter Burns.
Yeah. I'm the least experienced.
It's going to be a short filmography from you.
Yeah, my works amounted to 0 outside of Good Game, because Good Game was my first job in television. It was actually my first step into television production, video, media production. I went to uni as well, but I was studying journalism. So I was writing news stories, your basic pyramid, like written stuff, not a lot of creative work.
Mostly print?
Yeah, print, all print, yeah. And yeah, it didn't really... I've found that it has tied in more and more the more time I've spent on working on the show. Because there are elements that are similar. Just in terms of building a narrative, telling a story, which is what all the pieces, all the stories we put together for Good Game at least have that narrative. We want to build an arc from start to finish and bring the audience or the reader or whoever it is along for the ride. Make it. I mean, in news, it was very much about being clear, concise, factual. There's no bloat at all. Whereas we get to have a bit more fun on this show and be a bit more creative. But yeah, that ties across in ways that I'm learning about more and more. I've only been a producer on Good Game for 2.5 years basically now. Started helping out with a bit of writing here and there, particularly working with Goose, which are creative segments, so that was fun. But yeah, I started in 2011 as a production coordinator, so I got the paperwork right up front.
Yep.
And the early mornings right up front, straight out of uni, which was, you can't ask for a better first job, right? First full-time job. I started on my 21st birthday.
Wow.
It was like, happy birthday, you're a man now.
the best birthday present ever.
You're a man. So yeah, I've been here 5 days a week since 2011 and have just been learning as I go. And it's been an awesome job. And working on Pocket the last 2 years, well, last year and the start of this year, has been a really good way for me to broaden my skills even more. Working with quite a small team, being a camera operator and a sound operator, similar to what you were doing with your Channel 31 show, I'm basically making a community TV show in a corner of the Good Game office.
Which is kind of the best film school that you can get, really, is learning on the job.
Hands-on, practical. And I feel myself learning every day, which is awesome.
And you're getting paid to learn. Yeah. It's like you have to pay uni to learn. Yeah. You're actually getting paid to learn stuff. I still have a headset,
don't you worry about that.
So I guess my story is similarly to Ben. I went to film school, except I went to UTS. So I did a media arts and production degree at UTS, along with a law degree, because as a good Asian daughter, I had to make sure I had a backup plan. And I almost ended up in my backup plan. So I finished uni in the allotted 5 years of time. I had a lot of fun, actually. I probably had a better time in film school than you did, Ben.
Yeah, that's not hard.
I volunteered on a lot of short film shoots, made a couple of short films myself, and we actually had various subjects like producing, for example, where they actually go through call sheets and budgets, and
really?
You end up having to create a portfolio for a made-up project that then you had to budget and then call sheet. So I guess in that sense, that was taught.
That was great.
Quite well.
Yeah.
My dilemma was, at one point I had friends, go and become lawyers and actually get real jobs. And for me, growing up, film and TV was always my passion. That's all I wanted to do. Ever since I was like 6 years old or something. And so a graduate position came up in the ABC, but it wasn't actually in television, it was in digital business, which at that time dealt with ABC Shop Online and also selling ABC content to mobile companies like Vodafone or Telstra and Optus. So I applied for that graduate position, and I think for me, I poured my heart and soul into that job application. And I remember I had to write like a 500-word essay on the future of broadcasting.
Oh, wow.
And then I had to go in and sit in on this interview, and I remember prepping for this interview for 4 days. And I literally went to my friend and I said, these are possibly the questions that they're going to ask me. This is the whole system, all these behavioral questions. Okay, let's just practice until I can nail this interview. And so I went in, and I remember going in and after the interview just handing them my honours thesis for law, which I actually wrote on BitTorrent and digital copyright and all, the future of television, basically.
Yeah. Which is available on BitTorrent.
Which is available on BitTorrent now. I should put the PDF on BitTorrent. Yeah. So I was very lucky that I actually got that job. And so that position, that graduate position...
That sounded to me like hard work, not luck.
Yes. Well, I'm being polite when I say luck, but yeah, I worked really, really hard on that application and to get that position. But that position was a 2-year contract, which allowed me rotations within the ABC. So I spent, I think, my first 9 months within digital business, and then I had 3 months with ABC Innovation. I then had a rotation with Good Game, which was meant to be 3 months, but ended up being 5 or 6 months because I was then meant to move on to News 24 and they weren't ready for me, and so I ended up spending about 6 months in Good Game. And then when my contract came up for that graduate position, a position came up in Good Game, and then they asked me to apply, and I guess the rest is history. But I came in on the show as a field producer, doing a lot of segments with Goose for both Good Game Spawn Point and Good Game itself, and I still do field segments for Good Game and all the other peripheral elements to Good Game. And then when did I become Spawn Point director? I can't remember. It was like 2013.
Now, yeah.
Maybe the end of 2013.
Yeah, that
I
sounds
stepped
about right.
up to the directing Spawn Point,
Yeah.
I guess. So that is my history with Good Game.
Quite varied between the three of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good plethora.
I guess it
of
just shows,
experiences.
how people say, what's the way in?
Yeah.
There is no one way.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I think the most important thing is passion for the medium and what you want to do. So I want to take you guys back before your uni days.
Oh.
Growing up, were you always into TV, film, video games? Like, what inspired you and who were your heroes?
I grew up playing games. When I don't remember a time not having a PC to play games on or a console in the house. I had my dad's hand-me-down, 70s Pong clone thing. It was just 2 paddles and dials, and you can just move 2 little sticks up the screen. And that was the first console game I remember playing. And yeah, I guess all kids kind of just get put in front of a TV. I'm of that era, I was born in the 90s. Yeah. So it's you're just in front
You're
of
making us feel so old,
you're just
Peter.
in front of a screen constantly, and that hasn't stopped. I've spent now 26 years in front of screens in various forms. But yeah, I think the key thing for me in terms of wanting a creative career was getting into fantasy at a young age. I think for the Lord of the Rings films came out in 2001, 2, 3.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think the first film came out, and then I read The Lord of the Rings, my mum's copy of The Lord of the Rings. It's like a 1976 edition. The front cover was falling off. It had been read so much. There was duct tape on the side of the book to keep it all together. And I remember reading that thing, and I read it 3 times between the first film coming out and the second film coming out.
Wow.
So I kind of just fell down this hole of loving fantasy. I grew up, obviously before that I'd seen Star Wars, which is science fantasy.
Yeah.
Running around with swords, swinging stuff. That was kind of the drive and the passion for doing something creative, was wanting to make believe and be in a creative space, and just have a fun and an imaginative career. Yeah, I guess I didn't really have heroes in the industry. I know you guys will probably have your Roger Deakins and stuff like that. You'll see these these figureheads of this industry that we're in. I never really had that. I was like a lot of kids are, a bit wish-washy through school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I wanted to go to uni or what degree I wanted to do, really. I kind of just followed my friends from high school down to Wollongong, where I studied. And it was when I was at uni that things started to click. That first year of uni, I did nothing, but you get those results back, and I just I got a kick in the guts then, and it was all right, I need to actually think about what I'm doing with my life. Found the things that I liked at uni. I found people who were like-minded, and I had credit to my tutors because they were fantastic. A few of them in particular were just they encouraged me to work harder at things that I enjoyed doing. And then that's kind of when I moved across into journalism, and from there I kind of was I need to be at the ABC if I'm studying journalism, right? And then fell into meeting Jenna, our boss, and then fell into a job at Good Game.
And then you can, combine media with games. There's a job like that. Wow.
So I guess my heroes were people like Ben.
I didn't do anything. You didn't even know my name until I started here. Sometimes you're still hang on, who are you? Right.
Who's in that office?
That guy, that old guy. Ben.
who are my heroes growing up? Well, yeah, much like you, Pete, I was plonked in front of a television at a very early age, which I refer to as the third parent in my house.
Good.
It was a beautiful big TV covered in wood.
Oh, yeah?
Oh,
What are we talking
classic.
here? An old Magnavox or something?
Something like that. It might have even been a... What was that?
With
His
the dial
master's voice.
switch?
Yeah.
Yep.
But it was one of the first TVs with a remote. It had 3 buttons on it, and its range was about 1 metre, which was amazing.
What
Wow.
did those buttons do?
It was on, off, volume, up and down, and that's it.
Yeah, right.
So you couldn't change channel.
Yeah,
So you just had to stick with the one channel.
But the thing is, growing up in Tassie,
There was only one channel.
so it was fine. It was like, that's not a problem. No, it was Tas TV and ABC. So that was it. And yeah, I grew up watching TV. Mum and Dad were it's funny, they're not cinephiles, but they loved going to the movies, particularly going to the drive-in. So my earliest cinema memories are going to the drive-in with Mum and Dad, and particularly in summer, what Dad would do was kind of reverse the car into the spot, open the boot, and have a whole bunch of eskies there with drinks and food and snacks, and we'd sit out with deck chairs watching movies, and I just loved that whole experience. So I think one of the first films I saw was a movie called Flight of the Navigator, which I've revisited, in more recent times, and it's actually terrible, so don't watch it. But at the time, as, I don't know, a 6-year-old or something like that, just looking up the big screen thinking, oh my God, that's what I want to do. And I think like most people who want to get into cinema, I've had a range of different heroes. You're probably the same, Lynn. Like, from early days, I was a huge fan of animation. And before I can even remember, I was, okay, I think I want to draw. I think I want to be a cartoonist. So I was obsessed with Disney. I bought books about storyboards and cell shading and animation techniques, learning that it was 24 frames a second and all that kind of stuff. And then I guess in terms of my influences, by connection, it was the Warner Brothers short cartoons and the way that they told visual storytelling without any words. And I was like, okay, you don't need words. You need action and reaction and all that kind of stuff. And then as you grow up, you kind of find Spielberg, and so I was a big Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis fan, for a period of time. And then you sort of start to think, you start to go backwards. It's like, all right, well, who inspired Spielberg? And it's like, okay, well, he was sort of friends with George Lucas, and George Lucas was friends with Francis Ford Coppola. So what films did he make? Oh, okay, he did The Godfather. Well, I better check that out. And then you watch it as, a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, like, this is the greatest film ever made.
Yeah, I remember watching The Godfather as a 13-year-old. I remember being in the video store and it had the R rating on it.
Oh,
and I remember going to my dad and saying, oh, Dad, like, I really want to watch this film, but it's rated R. And my dad was like, oh, don't worry, it's a great film.
Yeah.
Just watch it.
Good taste.
Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, well, who inspired these guys? And so you sort of work backwards through David Lean and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually, in my late teens or something, I came to Orson Welles. And for like 2 years, I couldn't get enough of everything to do with Orson Welles. And so, watching Citizen Kane was just like, it just opened up everything in my mind. I was like, okay, this is how you tell a story. And I guess through that, started to experiment with your own stuff. I made lots of short films about vampires for a period because I was obsessed with Francis Ford Coppola. And it was around that time he was doing Bram Stoker's Dracula and all that kind of stuff. And so I guess now, in terms of my heroes, I still go back to people like Orson Welles, David Lean, sort of the pioneers, the directors, the men and women who were there at the very start. So I just love that history element of those films. But I guess like you now, Lynn, we talk about Soderbergh, we talk about Spielberg, we talk about Nolan, all those modern directors.
Yeah, I feel like at each, especially for me, at each point of my life, I've got someone different.
Yeah.
To look at and to be inspired by.
Yeah.
I, like you, Ben, I've been into film and television since I was a kid. And I remember both my parents being really into film as well. And my dad has a great love for 80s action films. So
very cool.
Instead of growing up with Disney films like The Little Mermaid, I would grow up with Rambo and Rocky and all of Steven Seagal's brilliant filmography. Chuck Norris, all that kind of stuff. But because I was born in Shanghai and I actually migrated to Australia as a 6-year-old, and I didn't understand English, I didn't speak a word of English, and I remember going to school in year 1 and just not even knowing how to ask the teacher, can I please go to the bathroom?
Wow.
So coming from a very different culture and without the language skills, my parents basically went to me, they were like, well, we don't really have the English skills to teach you English, so you're just allowed to watch as much television as you wanted.
Wow.
So that was my childhood. So I would literally sit in front of the television and watch Play School and Sesame Street and all the, kids programming on ABC and on other channels. And that just basically continued through my life. And I remember getting to high school and, going to school and still managing to fit in 8 hours of television a day.
Yeah.
All my friends going like, how the hell do you manage to watch so much TV? And I just watched everything. I watched everything from the morning shows to, the kids' afternoon shows to the X-Files, The Pretender, all those great 90s dramas and comedies as well. For me, growing up in primary school and high school, I was the only person in the school who wanted to go into film and television.
Oh, right.
I remember on my year 6 yearbook or whatever, it was like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, to do something in the film and TV industry. Yeah. Only person. And then I got into high school, and out of, 1,100 girls, it was a girls only school, I was known as that crazy person who wanted to work in film.
There's old TV Lin.
I know, right? That's a crazy one who wants to work in film. Yeah. And I basically went through my childhood thinking that I was the only one who wanted to make stories and to tell stories through cinema or through television until I got into uni.
Right.
Until I went to film school and went, oh, there are other people like me?
Yeah.
This is great. We can talk about the Mighty Ducks.
But it's competition.
They are competition, but I knew I was better than them. No, not really. And so growing up, I used to go to the video store during school holidays, and I was allowed to borrow as many tapes as I wanted, as long as they were the $1 weekly ones. I don't know if you guys remember.
Oh yeah.
Because it was like $7 for an overnight, and it was like $3 for a 3-day, and it was like $1 for a weekly tape. Yeah. Kids born after 1995 would have no idea what we're talking about. The days of Blockbuster and VHS stores.
Can I just say, the VHS store had a very distinctive smell, which I miss to this day.
Yeah, because it's cassette, it's tape.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I remember during the school holidays, I would literally bring back 16 films in a week and just devour them. And I would watch everything from, crappy kids' comedies to The Godfather, as I mentioned. And I grew up, adoring people like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Coppola and Martin Scorsese as well. But I think it wasn't until The Godfather that I went, holy crap, films can be this good. This is filmmaking. And there was one more point in my life during my early 20s in film school when I discovered Wong Kar-wai. I don't know if you guys have seen any Wong Kar-wai's films. He's done In the Mood for Love, 2046, Happy Together, Chungking Express. He's a well-renowned director from Hong Kong, and he makes very timeless yet non-linear narrative films. And so growing up and watching all these Hollywood films and blockbusters, you're very 3-act or 5-act structured films. They're very linear, almost chronological in a way, and then suddenly you discover this guy who is basically writing scripts as he makes the film. He basically gets the actors together and he'll work with them over a period of 5 years and just shoot, write, and then somehow make this beautiful masterpiece of a film. Wow. And I think at that point in uni, I just went, wow, you can tell stories in so many different ways. And that kind of really opened my eyes to cinema other than Hollywood for a long time. I went and discovered a lot of Hong Kong cinema and the rest. So it's great, learning about your childhoods and how different they all were. Bringing this back to producing and directing, what is producing and directing?
Paperwork and early mornings. That is a really good question.
But I want to define it, I guess, in the television context.
Yeah, of course.
Because in film, a producer and director are two very, very different people. You know, usually the producer is a person who gets all the talent together and they find the funding, and the director who is, basically kind of makes the film, gives it the vision and directs people,
Creative
manages
head.
people,
Yeah.
during the shoot process and the production process. In television, however, and where we work, occasionally they are almost interchangeable.
Yeah. The lines do blur in that sense. I mean, there are so many producers in television. I often ask, what does a producer actually do? I think the easiest way is to actually come back to what you were saying, Pete. You tell a story. And whether you tell that within a 5-minute field piece or across the course of a half-hour show or a feature-length documentary or whatever it is in television, you really are a storyteller. Then it gets complicated when you drill down into different aspects of producing, because it is obviously not just that. You are also people management, your time management, your project management, you're a researcher. You have to be so many different things. It's hard to really define.
So I just want to break this down. For example, Ben, if you had to produce a story, what would your process be? What would your first step be?
Well, I think the first thing is really good quality research. That is the first thing, and thank God for the internet. So it's just basically finding out. So in the context of Good Game, okay, let's have a field story. It's time for put Goose out there and get him out into the field. The first thing I would do is look at what haven't we done on the show in a while, and we kind of look at different areas of gaming. From a creative point of view, from a technological point of view, from a cultural impact point of view. So we look at what we haven't done in a while. And so, for example, I might think, okay, well, we haven't looked at some cool new tech in a while. So I would then just start to go to different universities that we have access to, that we might have a good relationship with, and just sort of be aware of what they're working on. So last year I found out that Sydney University, one of the students there had taken it upon himself to put together an interactive Pac-Man machine. And so the first thing you do is you just call up the university and say, look, I've heard that there's a kid there who's put together this Pac-Man thing. Can I talk to him? And then it's, a case of getting some emails, a bit of swapping of details, get in touch with somebody. You almost do a bit of a pre-phone interview, because you want to make sure that when you get out there with cameras and lights and staff, you're instantly starting to cost money, and you need to get a return for that level of investment. So you kind of talk over the phone, okay, Tim, whatever your name is, tell us about this Pac-Man machine. Where was the inspiration? Why have you done this? How's it adding to gaming? How's it adding to your education? All that kind of stuff. Okay, that sounds like there's a good story. Then through our production coordinators, I'd say, right, we need to look at booking a crew, look at crew availability. If you're lucky, you get to choose your crew in terms of who is most appropriate for the story that you want to tell. Some camera operators are slow and methodical, but give you a range of beautiful images. Other camera operators are quick and dirty and fast, and give you a ton of footage, which may not be beautiful, but it's what you need for that particular outcome. You organise location, you organise transport, parking, make sure there's food close, water, all that kind of stuff. Head out, basically tell the story on your feet. What I often find is the story you're going in to tell ends up being different to the one that you leave with, because things are thrown at you in the day. Like they'll mention something, doing this as a tribute to somebody that was inspirational to me as a gamer or something. Oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Well, let's follow that arc, or so on. Make sure you got the pictures. Make sure you're visually telling the story. Make sure that you're putting it in context so the audience don't really need to... They're not left asking too many questions. They're like, okay, yeah, I've got everything I need here. Then basically coming back, and in post-production, there's a couple of ways we can all do it ourselves. We can all edit, and we all have access to laptops that we can do, or we can do a bit of a rough paper edit where I sort of know what the stories I want to tell, and then I go and sit with Andrew or Gus sometimes, whoever it is that's available, and we pretty much build the story in the edit suite. So it's a pretty, by the numbers, tick the box sort of system, particularly in Good Game.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why Pocket exists is because there's we had, as an organisation, or as a group that has existed for 10 years now, we have a glut of content at our disposal, really.
Yeah, we really do.
If it's not playing games, it's being contacted by PR people about particular events that are happening.
Yeah.
in the gaming space, which a lot of the stuff that comes through to Pocket is we've been approached by someone else with something that's happening. There's obviously a lot to take into consideration working for the ABC as well. Editorially, what we can and can't talk about, what we can show. We don't want to be promotional of a particular product. But if it all, if all the stars align and it makes sense for it to go out there, Pocket is a very like guerrilla style production. We know we've either got a talent available to us or hands-on with the game. Nick and I obviously work together every day, so we are used to working together. You have a shorthand. Yeah. We do have a shorthand. Yeah. So it is just packing up our tiny little studio, putting the camera, putting the mic, putting everything into a kit, and we're out and we're across there, and we know the kinds of shots we want to get in terms of like what we need to see. Yeah. And it's rough and it's dirty, and we get it done as fast as we can, really, because then we've got to get it back to John, who's got to turn it around for that afternoon. So, like, it's a quick turnaround process. So in that, a lot of the steps, a lot of the, I guess, like, artistic direction kind of gets put to the side, and it's raw. Sure. Like, context storytelling, right? Yeah. It's like, say what is happening. We'll see what's happening because he's doing it right now. Yeah, get to the point. Yeah. We're there. We've done it. We hear what Nick has to say about it, and we're out. You know, and it's really fast paced that way. Yeah. What's really interesting is, say, in the last 10 or 15 years, with the advent of digital filmmaking and kind of smaller technologies and faster technologies and prosumer stuff coming along, is that a lot of productions, and broadcasters included, have kind of gone into this field of producer-shooters, which we've all done in the past. You know, we've all produced and directed and shot segments ourselves, and we've also worked with crew. Yeah. What do you guys think is the difference between the two? And because a lot of people do say, oh, yeah, you can shoot, right? Like, it's fine. You know, we don't need a crew. You don't need to go out with a crew. You've got the skills. Yeah. You'll come back with the same thing. I'm of the opinion that they're two very different things. Completely. Yeah. So what do you guys think? Well, it's actually interesting because I'm experiencing both at the moment on a little side project I spoke about a couple of weeks ago, How to Be a Fan with Hex. So within each episode, I'm kind of getting the full gamut of production, which is great. We work with JP, our camera operator, on some bigger shoots. We have a soundo. I have a script in terms of I know exactly what I want from this element for the show. But then other times it's just myself and Hex, and I've just got the C100, just the little camera, and it's just, all right, Hex, I just need you to do this, pop here, and then just tell us what your thoughts. Just keep a dialogue going with me and the audience. No direction at all. I just like to follow her and see where she goes organically. So I think it depends. You've got to treat not only each project as an individual project, but even down to what it is you need within the moment for that project as an individual element. Sometimes you need the full kit. And you'll see that in Good Game. You'll see things like some elements I'm really proud of is the war story that I did with Gus or Goose early last year. You know, we had Cockatoo Island at our disposal. We had a full Sony F5 on a floating rig, you know, all that kind of stuff. But we needed that for the type of story that we were telling. And then that versus something like the story you guys went and shot with Goose, where he just went and met some local developers, and it felt more organic for it to be sort of, you know, not homemade, but a little bit rough and ready and a little bit guerrilla. I think it really depends on the content that you're making and what you're trying to communicate to your audience. Yeah, and that all happens in the early stages of the production cycle, right? Like you were talking about before, that step happens before you even go to the coords with this is what I need, because you want to visualize the story, work out the tone of the story, and that's where you start building on, like, if I need crew. Yeah. Well, I mean, for the most part, we use crew on Good Game. But the style of, and like you said, which camera operator knowing what people are good and bad at. So, yeah, that's kind of where it starts very early in the process. Tone. I think is very important. Yeah. I think it, for me in particular, you know, they can be two very different things. For example, if you have a crew, then you have to make sure you're communicating clearly to the crew. Absolutely. Your vision, which is another step, right? And sometimes that becomes quite difficult
it can be.
You know, depending on who you have and depending on the situation.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're shooting by yourself, you know what you want in your head.
Yeah,
There's no middleman
Yeah.
to deal with. However, if you are, you know, the producer shooter on a project, you basically have to think two roles.
Yeah.
So you've got your producer's hat on, and then you've got your, you know, director of photography hat on.
Yeah.
And you have to think about two very different things. And sometimes you do tend to miss out on certain things or certain shots or aspects because you have so much to think about.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every time I go out with Nick, like, I have to ask him, like, once or twice during a shoot. You know, he talks for 6 minutes. Like, what did you just say just now? Like, because the light was changing because we're shooting in daylight or something, and I'm just trying to, like, make
I'm
sure
too busy trying to make sure you're in focus, right?
Yeah, I'm making the shot work and not listening to the words. For that, it only takes 15 seconds, and it's like, what just happened?
Yeah.
We need to, like, reset. Like,
Absolutely.
So back onto your point, Peter, earlier when you said, you know, producing is about 10% creativity and 90% resource management.
That is
I mean,
true.
that is something I do want to talk about. Is a lot of people think that producing television or movies or directing, you know, TV, it must be, you know, so much fun, must be so creative. You guys must be having a ball every week. Honestly, it's like 95% resource management. You know, it's people management and time management. A lot of paperwork and a lot of emails.
And problem solving as well.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of problems we get thrown at us. And it's kind of like what you said before, Pete, you sort of have a vision. And then, unfortunately, and it's the nature of the industry, of money, of time and all the rest of it, you see that vision whittled away. It's like, well, you can't have that camera operator and you don't get a soundo, so your camera operator's now doing sound as well, right? And you can't have that location and your presenter's running an hour late and all of a sudden, you know, you're great big 70mm Panavision wide vista of a vision is narrowed down to an 8mm.
your Tarantino film turns into a Tommy Wiseau film.
It's just green screen.
End podcast right there. Yeah, that's true.
My favourite meme of what a producer does is herding cats.
Oh, yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
I mean, that's pretty much what we do. And Ben and I both direct in the studio from week to week. Ben directs Good Game and I direct Good Game Spawn Point. And sometimes it literally is like herding cats and making sure everyone's in the spot they're meant to be in, right?
And it sounds like a joke, but actually just getting everybody in the same place at the same time is a task. It's a skill. And as soon as one person loses focus, it's like, I'm just going to go make a cup of tea or I'm just going to quickly make a phone call, then everybody else in that environment goes, okay, well, if they're going to go make a phone call, then I'm going to go off and check my email.
Yeah, you know, Bajo's stretching his back,
exactly,
you know, Steph's off making a tea.
Yeah, and it's like, no. You all need to stay in the same place.
Yeah.
I'd love, I think is it Face Off where they have those magnetic boots in the prison? I just want a pair of those, or quite a few pairs of those.
So you
hand
just
them out to the
one for
crew.
everyone on set.
Lockdown
Got the
people.
big button. Stay where you are.
Yeah. I was going to ask, have you directed an episode of Swan Point?
No, I never have. I've directed elements of it.
Because I've directed a couple episodes of Big Show when you were away.
Yeah.
And it is quite a different beast. Like, I hope you
yeah.
get the chance to direct an episode of Spawn Point, but because it is just slightly more, you know,
Manic.
maybe slightly more is like an understatement, but because
a lot more, yeah.
we basically have double the amount of people on a Spawn Point set.
Darren
and
is 3 people.
Yeah.
yeah, spoilers alert. But also because we occasionally have visitors as well.
Yeah, you get a lot of
we get a
visitors
lot
in
of
Spawn
visitors
Point. Yeah.
with a lot of kids coming in as well. So occasionally we can have up to like 15, 20 people in the studio.
Right.
And I remember directing a Good Game maybe not last year or the year before.
Sure,
and you guys have like 4 people
Yeah.
in the studio.
Yeah, it can be quite a quiet experience. And it's funny because then I think that energy comes out on screen. Like sometimes I watch Spawn Point and I think, I reckon there was not an audience, you don't have an audience, but I reckon there was a school group coming through or something because you can see Barjo and Hex feeding off that energy.
Yeah. Well,
and
we're always at the precipice of everything going to shit.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. We're right on that line.
Just bringing it back to the paperwork, you know, like all the resource management and stuff. When I'm on my personal time, I hate email and I hate my phone.
Yeah.
They can just bugger off, you know, because I associate them so much with like the phone's ringing, it's something to do with the story, or I've got an email, like I've got paperwork to do. So it's just like none of that, thank you.
Building a rapport with talent, right? That is something that is so crucial to how good a story can be. and it's not necessarily just the hosts we work with or the field reporters that we work with, but it's also the people that we interview. Can you guys talk a bit about your process on dealing with talent?
Yeah, it's a balance between giving them enough information that they feel comfortable, but not so much that they feel overwhelmed. Yeah, start the conversation early. People can kind of get starstruck by, a camera, a light, a microphone, a group of 5 people just standing there staring at them. And I think you've got to bring it down for that person. It's like, look, there is nobody else here. It's just you and I, and we're just having a conversation. But I also think that comes through in that research element. I would not put somebody on camera who made it obvious that they felt very uncomfortable about being on camera. Yeah. I'd be like, okay, obviously, if you're the head of it, but you don't want to talk, then do you have a spokesperson? Do you have somebody that is maybe
media
more
trained?
Yeah, media trained, just more comfortable. In terms of Bajo, Hex, Goose, Nick, Hingers, the other people that we deal with, that is about a long-term relationship building and learning the different ways in which Bajo and Hex work. Bajo loves improvisation. He loves to muck around and be silly. Hex, not so much. He likes to sort of know exactly where things are going, and you have to balance that. You have to somewhere meet in the middle, and that is just about getting in the studio and playing around with it. You know what I mean?
And Goose needs a lot of encouragement. I'm just looking at him right now. Pete, you have a very unique, I guess, working relationship with Nick, because you basically direct him every day, whereas, we direct maybe once a week or twice a week at most. How did you kind of find the best way in terms of getting the best performance from Nick?
I mean, when Nick first came on to Pocket, he brought a lot of his, because he'd just come off the roast. Well, I mean, it had been about 6 months off the roast, but that was his most recent on-screen performance and job. So he came in with this very formal attitude. He'd been watching a lot of Good Game proper, and was trying to effectively build a online on-screen persona that matched the tone of Good Game, where we were trying to do something very different with Pocket. And I think just naturally over time, as we built up a friendship and as he became more comfortable in this environment, in this office space, and this is an intimidating office to come into, because we've been working together for 5 years or whatever, we're all very tight-knit. He's totally part of that now. But just getting him to relax and be himself, and his performance is so him, it's hardly a performance. That's just his personality kind of rising to the top. In terms of getting him to talk, we do a fair few interviews on Pocket, and getting him to talk to other people, the key to that for me, and they're 2 shots typically, so both talent are on screen, Nick with his guest, is getting them talking before, well, it doesn't necessarily need to be before the camera's rolling, but before the interview starts, because he disarms people so well. And it only takes 3 minutes for someone to just forget the situation they're in. You're right. It's it's just as soon as their brain forgets that the camera's pointing at them, it's just they relax, visibly you see them physically relax, and tonally there's no quiver in their voice. They're just okay, I'm just having a conversation with a person across the table from me. But yeah, in terms of building that relationship with Nick, it's just time spent with people, and I guess it happened at a faster rate because it's every day. Yeah.
I mean, so much of directing is basically you being the psychologist, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whenever you're dealing with, in particular, our long-term talent, so our hosts and reporters, is very much working out what the psychology of each person and how you can work best with them. Sometimes people react better to more direction. Some people don't want as much direction, and it's just trying to find that relationship with every individual and making sure it's solid. And that takes time, like you said, Pete, that takes time. So how do you direct a camera? Because that is a question I guess we asked ourselves, right?
Sure.
In terms of how do you direct a camera to tell a story? And sometimes we get very excited about different technologies and camera moves. Let's put her on a dolly, let's put her on a jib. Let's do cool stuff with it. But in the end, you have to make sure that you do the right thing to tell the story. Right?
Well, I think it all comes down to how do I want the audience to feel, and I let that dictate my direction. I would love to sort of, be grandiose and come up with amazing, complicated camera moves, like a Christopher Nolan epic. But a couple of things. First of all, we don't have the money, we don't have the time, and I don't know if I've got the talent to be Christopher Nolan.
You just have to be really dour and British, right?
That's right. I need to always wear a suit to work. But I think about, okay, how do I want them to feel? And I use the tools of the trade to help me make the audience feel like that. So, for example, if you want to isolate somebody in a crowded space, you use a long lens. If you want to make them part of the environment, you use a wide lens and bring the camera close to them. If you want to create a sense of a change in tone or a sense of movement, then that's when you swing the camera and you put it, on some track or a dolly or something like that. And if you want it to be reflective or something, then you might put the camera above their eye line so the person on screen feels smaller in frame. It's just about, years of study of watching a film 3 or 4 times over and watching it once for story, once for the process, once for the script, once for the lens choices and the technology that they've used, and understanding what are they doing here that they're not telling me. What is not just being blurted out by an actor, but what is this making me feel purely from the technology this filmmaker has available. And in a weird sort of way, and I know, I'm not trying to get lost up our own asses here, but in a weird sort of way, we do that a little bit on, Good Game and on Spawn Point. You can't help but use those tools of the trade that we've built up over time.
I do want to ask, though, I guess in my experience, a lot of what I do is pure intuition, right?
Yeah.
But intuition does come from an experience and from what you see and what you study as well. A lot of my choices come from intuition as well as restriction. Because as you said, we don't have budget, we've got limited space. In particular, Pete, you shoot in the pocket studio and it's tiny.
Yeah.
And we've also in the past used very small rooms, like for example, with Dave Callan's Laying Down the Law, the second series we did of that, we basically shot in the pocket studio.
Yeah.
And we brought in literally, 10 pieces of 18th century furniture and furnished that space, as well as his noir
that's right.
bit as well, and people don't realize how small that space is, but so much of what we do, so kind of so many times where we put the camera is dependent on that space and what we're trying to shoot.
Absolutely. Can I ask you, Lynn, what do you decide to storyboard and not storyboard?
Well, Ben, I can't draw.
Sure.
So I don't really storyboard. I guess for me is I tend to visualize what I want to see. The most important thing to me is to block out the action.
Right.
Is to work out the movement of the people within the scene.
Sure.
If you want to explain it that way, and then their relationship to each other, and then work out where best to put the camera to tell the story.
Okay.
And that's, when we do more fictional type of work. I think in the field, when I'm interviewing, it's very much dictated by the space.
Yeah.
And, if you only have one good wall to work with in an interview space, you're using that wall.
Yeah,
try and find 3 good angles on that one wall.
That's right.
And you've got a pot plant in that corner, you're using that pot plant.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I do a lot more, I don't do a lot of fictional stuff. I think we did one thing last year, which is the Whiplash thing.
Which is amazing, by the way.
Which is awesome fun. But, I would like to do more of that. Totally.
Yeah. But to be honest, though, we do a lot of parodies across all of our shows.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is somewhat easy because all we have to do is go back to the source material and just
match the
copy what, what actually experienced people and talented people do.
Imitation
and we just copy
is the highest form of flattery, though,
Yeah, exactly.
Right? We're just flattering them.
It's going to be a lot of X-Files imitations in this year, just letting everybody know.
Yeah.
I storyboard, apart from reviews, I storyboard almost everything.
Yeah, I know. I love your little book. There should be, you should have an extra Twitter profile that's just you photographing your storyboards.
My terrible storyboard.
Because obviously that's come from your history in wanting to be in animation and being a cartoonist.
Probably, yeah. I just rely on them so much, and it's great. Yeah, our field pieces on Good Game are a little bit different, where sometimes we kind of weave fiction through them. So things like the James Bond BC, the Survivalist BC with Gus, the Western BC, even the little Name the Game gags I do occasionally at the end of each episode, even they are actually storyboarded. They're probably even more storyboarded before they're written. Because I'm look, I don't know what I want you to say in this line. Barjo, I know you're probably going to want to impro it anyway, and Steph, Hex, I'm sure you've got your ideas as well. But
so
at least
you
need
go
to know
all George
where
Miller
to shoot.
over it.
Yeah, I really do. Just because when you get lost in that moment, you come back to it. And the other thing is, it helps me with my scheduling. If I go into a situation, I'm like, all right, I've got 15 shots here I need to achieve today. I have 6 hours to achieve it. Therefore, I divide it, and I know how much I should be shooting, and I know when I'm on schedule. I'm not from, I'm 10 minutes behind, I'm 15 minutes behind. Right, let's go back and let's start either making up time or cutting shots.
Yeah, a shot list is a must.
Helps.
Like, you have to have a shot list.
Yeah.
To make sure you've got everything that you need.
Yeah,
you
really
don't miss out on
does.
anything.
Yeah.
And we keep coming back to experience, right? Like, how long those 15 shots are going to take you because you've been through that process.
But it's different on every project, though, actually, Pete, and different from camera operator to camera operator. Some camera operators will, if you say, look, you've got 20 minutes, they will take 20 minutes to get that shot. Yeah. Others will be like, oh, mate, I only need 5 minutes to set this up. So,
What are some of the favourite things you've worked on in Good Game that you've produced and directed?
Whiplash. Just a lot of the field stuff we did last year. Even field in like air commas, air quotation marks, down in the studio when you guys were having fun setting up for the live shoot that you guys were doing.
Yeah.
Just like playing in different spaces, because I do work in a shoebox with 2 other guys every day, so it's nice to get some fresh air and go out and have fun and play around with some different ideas.
Man, there is actually a lot. The great thing about this show is previously on every other project that I've worked on, apart from some of the documentaries I've made, and you're right, Lynn, the feature film I was lucky enough to do, on this one I get to play, and we very rarely hear no. Very rarely. As long as we're keeping within time and we're not getting lost in what the show is, we get to play a lot. So some of the favourite things is the James Bond BC that you and I made together.
We'll talk more about that in our Bond podcast.
Okay, fair enough. The Survivalist BC I did with Gus was great because I storyboarded it all. I pretty much got exactly what I wanted in my head, and that was great because it was a bit of drama worked in, which is, I think, every director, that's what they kind of feed off. I liked making the Western BC, that was a lot of fun. The name the game gags at the end of each episode, but I guess when it comes down to Good Game, the things that I'm most proud of is we've done 3 specials during my time here. We did a special on mental health. We did a special on how war is depicted in games around the 100th anniversary of the Anzacs last year. And then late last year, as a last-minute decision, me putting my hand up and saying, look, I don't want to get everybody, too busy, but I think we should do a special on how sex is depicted in video games. And we all pulled together and made a really great show. I love those. One time when I leave and move on from Good Game, they are the 3 episodes that I will have on my show reel.
Yeah, but you have the porn one there, you dirty bastard.
Of course. I finish off with that one. Yeah.
I'm fortunate because I get to interview everyone. I get to come up with a favourite, like, every time I do this. So I'm just going to bring up, like, everything I've ever done across the year.
Yeah.
But occasionally I do look over some of the stories and specials I've done in the past. And do you guys ever watch something that you've done and have thought, how the hell did I get that made? Like, how did we finish that? I don't know if you guys ever have that feeling.
I look back on everything I make and what did I make a mess of? What can I do better next time?
Sometimes the biggest example was I was trawling through the Spawn Point videos we have just to look at what we've done in the past and what we can expand on and etc. I came across the totally incompatible Christmas Carol.
Oh, brilliant!
Which we made.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
So that was like, I think it was like 14 minutes.
Yeah.
It was literally half of that episode, that Christmas special. I think it was a 2014 Christmas special.
Yeah.
And it was basically taking Totally Incompatible, which was this mid-show sitcom with Goose and Darren that we had, and then taking inspiration from Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol and also a Muppets Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
And I remember coming up with the idea of that and, discussing it with everyone and then writing that script. That was a 14-page script. I think it was the biggest script we've ever done, I think, across any of our shows.
Yeah, it must be.
For sure.
And it was massive. And I remember, being up at 2 a.m. and writing that script and going, oh, this is great. This is going to be so good. Like, we're going to have so much fun making it. And I think I was in pre-production on that for about 4 weeks, before we actually shot. And 14-page script, that was shot in a day.
Whoa.
And with 2 half-day pickups.
Right. Yeah.
And I think what's the ratio in Hollywood? I don't want to compare me to Hollywood because
it's like
this
half
is not
a
Hollywood.
page a day or
yeah,
something,
it's half a
isn't it?
page a day,
Yeah.
but you're lucky, on an actual TV show to get what, like 6 pages of fiction done a day. So we did a lot that day. And in terms of crew, it was camera, sound, and me.
Yeah.
So I was doing everything from like producing, directing, first AD, grip. I was pushing the jib at one stage. And I remember those 2 days just being an absolute blur. And I look back to that segment and I just go, I don't even know how we did it. Because you watch, I mean, I don't know if you guys have watched it recently, but we got a lot of good coverage. There were like close-ups, mid-shots, wide shots.
All
like,
that blocking of yours coming into play.
Yeah,
It was all
proper
there.
blocking. We had green screen and then we had plates and we had... Like, I don't know how we ended up doing it, but it was one of those things where I went, yeah, I think that's pretty good. I think that might be on my show reel.
Yeah, and there was a lot of work that went into that before the crew arrived. Like weeks and weeks of...
Yeah, of planning, of costumes, of scheduling. And that's what most of producing and directing is prep, know, and what people see during that day is all because of the prep.
Yeah, it's a combination of all that month's worth of work.
Yeah. And if you haven't got that prep right, then you're more likely to fail.
Yeah.
And even if you get that prep right, you can fail on that day.
That's right.
But that's where most of the job is. Well, to finish off, guys, I know a lot of our audience do want to get into film and TV, and a lot of them do want to produce and direct. What would be your advice to, say, your 12-year-old self?
Like actually my 12-year-old self?
Yeah, the one who wanted to get into film and TV.
Because I think my advice would be don't eat so much chocolate and pay attention in school.
All right, well, to the people who do want to get into the industry.
I think the thing is make stuff early and make stuff often. There is nothing that can prepare you and teach you more than just picking up a camera, going out with a couple of friends, filming a whole bunch of stuff, like lots and lots and lots of stuff, editing it and figuring out what you're good at, what your visual style is like, and how the machine of it comes together. I was very lucky at a period of my life where I actually got to go back to Swinburne and do a little bit of teaching and just talk about my experiences of making film. And a lot of students came up to me and said, I've only just gotten into being interested in filmmaking and I've got my dream short film that I want to make. I've saved up $5,000 and I'm going to pour all of it. And my advice was always, don't do it yet. Just get 4 friends around a table and just direct a conversation. Direct a person just walking down the street. Direct a car pulling into a driveway. Find out how all those individual things work, how to produce them from a safety point of view, from a time and logistics point of view. Just try things out, because then you will build up your skills over time, and after a couple of years it will be like, okay, I'm ready to spend that $5,000 on that short film. And it builds a body of work as well. The first thing that we always ask when somebody says, I'd love to get a job on Good Game, it's like, all right, well, show us what you've done. And whether that's you've written about games, you've presented about games, you've made some short films, you've made some YouTube videos, you have a blog, you have whatever it is, you have to make content, because your resume is one thing, but really it's that body of work which you are really being assessed on. And
I think it's so easy now, because when we went to film school, cameras were at least $3,000 or even more, and you didn't have, the lights were thousands of dollars. Nowadays you can film something on your iPhone. You could get a mic that plugs into your phone. Cameras can cost around $700 with a really good lens, and that barrier has just kind of come down a lot.
Absolutely.
And I think it's so easy, if you're growing up, just go make stuff. And get your friend, just go make stuff.
That's what I'd do. I would travel back in time to give myself, my 12-year-old self, my current smartphone and be like, go and shoot some stuff. Because you can learn so much from just doing that.
And he'll get rich, because then he could sell the technology to, to companies.
And buy shares in YouTube.
Yeah, that's right,
I concur with everything that you guys have said. I'd also say that, watch films, watch television, read.
Yes, read a lot.
Travel.
Yep.
Meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
Life experience is like the best thing to help you tell stories. If you can't empathize with other humans, it's going to be really hard for you to tell a story. Like that's pretty much it. So that's my advice.
Good advice. There you go.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Peter and Ben, for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having us.
If you'd like to drop us a line or let us know what you'd like us to discuss, you can tweet me at Elgeology or leave a comment on Facebook and SoundCloud. Till next time, goodbye.